All right. Welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. Before you guys get at me, I know it's been a minute. I've been working, been trying to get things going. But I'm here. I'm here. I'm present. Thank you all for all that you guys do, all the following, all the support, all the prior guests that I've had. Wouldn't be able to do this without you guys. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to the top of it. Um, yeah, this is Resilient Voices and Beyond, episode 8 of season 3. So we're gonna get it going. If you don't know who I am, my name is Michael D. Davis Thomas, aka MDDT Speaks. I spent approximately 11 years in the Michigan child welfare system. First half on the juvenile side, second half on the foster care side, aged out, endured homelessness, and so many different things. Worked in child welfare for 11 years now. Starting out as a youth care worker, working juvenile corrections, and more. So that is why I'm here. That's why I'm speaking to you guys to continue to educate, continue to help people get an understanding, but continue to bring those voices of resilience to you guys. Without further ado, I'll have my guest introduce herself.
Hi, yeah, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm Grace Foster, and I am the founder and CEO of the Inclusion Initiative, whose mission is to close the opportunity gap for transracial adoptees and foster care alumni. And I am both a transracial adoptee and also experience the foster care system. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited for our conversation.
Awesome. Awesome. It's a pleasure to have you here. So thank you. My first question kind of goes into a little bit more of your introduction there. If you don't mind and if you feel comfortable, give us a little bit of more about yourself and when this journey began on the road to your work.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the journey began, right, when I found myself in an orphanage in South Korea. And I had been, well, as the story goes, I had been abandoned at about 3 years old at the local market in Busan, South Korea, and went into, you know, state care through South Korea and was placed into a couple of orphanages. And so, you know, everything about me is kind of made up. My name's made up, my age is made up, my birthday's made up. And I don't even know where I was actually born. I only know where I was found. And so, my whole life journey has been to really live with that and not be able to change that and not really know the truth. Um, and I've really carried that throughout my whole life, where I have recently started exploring what that really means for me as a person now and how that shaped me. So I did come into the United States through a family who had intended to adopt me. And let's just say after 2 years, that did not work out. And they were not prepared for what it meant to take in an older child, right? That had experienced loss and abandonment and abuse. And I was sent away from that home and put in the foster care system. And my time in the foster care system was not very long because the family I was placed into eventually adopted me. But we fostered a lot of kids, and some were adopted and some were not. And I had siblings of all different races from all over. And I had fellow Korean siblings, I had Black siblings, I had white siblings, one from Eastern Europe, Latino siblings. So it was quite a mixture of people. with all different lived experiences and backgrounds, which interestingly added to my confusion. It didn't help answer the question, right? Who am I? What am I? And I was placed into a white family. So, for those of you that don't really know what transracial adoption means, it just means that you are of one race and ethnicity and you're placed into a family that reflects a different race and ethnicity. So, my adoptive parents were white. And like I said, the family was of mixed race. So it was a very interesting transracial adoption experience. But all of those life experiences, growing up in a family like that, really having to navigate my way into a community that didn't accept me for who I was. They would only accept me if I acted and behaved like they did, which was predominantly white, right? So white behaviors, white look, the white way of speaking. That's what I learned, and that's what I learned would help me have find success in the world, and so that's what I modeled myself after. And I did that for years and years and years and years. And in 2020, it led me to a place, like many of us in this space, of with the world now recognizing more and being willing to listen more, right? To the racial disparities, to the inequities, to the injustices of what especially Black people are facing in this country, we all stopped and asked ourselves, like, is this the place we want to be right now? Or is this the person we want to be right now? Do we feel like we're contributing to our society, our community, our families in the way that we had envisioned that we would? For me, the answer was no. And it took me a few years to really dive in and gather some of my thoughts and do the internal work of understanding what that meant for myself. And I had to unlearn racist behavior, especially toward myself. I hated the way I looked. I hated that I was Asian. I hated that I was different my entire life because I was placed into this white family, white community who taught me to hate myself. And I also, at the time, was planning to have a baby. And that meant, did I want to bring a kid into this world where I don't even know myself and I don't like who I am? And I can't, if I were to raise her, would I understand how to help her navigate as a person of color? And the answer was no. So I had to really understand like what I wanted to give her and provide her and how I wanted to model behaviors for her. And so I did all of that hard internal work. And along with that came, like I said, unlearning of all these behaviors and all these, white supremacy narratives that we learn our whole lives. But also came amazing, wonderful connections, amazing understandings of different people like me who were transracially adopted or experienced the foster care system, and their stories of resilience and their stories of changing their lives and what their futures look like, saying no to what society was telling them they should be or how they should act or what they should be grateful for, right? Because a lot of us are taught like, you should just be grateful for whatever scraps you got. Right? These people saved you, they gave you things that you otherwise wouldn't have. And that's not okay because A, we don't know that that's true. We don't know. But B, we deserve to have autonomy and decision-making power in our own lives, and that was stripped from us. So I got to hear a lot of these different perspectives from a lot of people who reflected my shared identities. And through all that, the Inclusion Initiative was born, and that's where I am today.
Wow, wow. Hmm. You gave us a lot in that. And if you don't mind, I want to unpack and ask a few questions surrounding that journey. Man.
I know it's a
I
lot.
so
You
so
take a
so
minute.
like, you mentioned first that you were in orphanages. Um and I don't I know like our system here is a lot different than other places, So from where first, let me ask, what was the age that you came to America?
I was estimated to be 5 years old.
Estimated to be 5 years old. Okay. Um, so it's fair to say at that time you had some recollect of life, and what was going on. Probably not like an expensive, but you had something to about something. And the crazy thing about trauma is that it forces us to grow up a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, so uh, if I could pick your brain a little bit here and just ask, coming prior to coming here, what was that process like in a little bit for you mentally? And I know you were young, but um, what did you think about these people coming over and wanting to bring you home? I guess that's my question. I'm gonna go with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it is a lot to unpack, and even though I was young, I remember quite a bit of it because, as you said, trauma has an interesting way of staying with us.
Hmm.
And some things, your body goes into protection mode and you block it all out,
Hmm.
and some things just live with you. And my time at the orphanage really just lives with me. It's some of the clearest memories I have of being little.
Hmm.
And it was a very tough system, very like cold system
Hmm.
by the nature of just, these institutions being so under resourced
Hmm.
and just the practice of child welfare back then
Yeah.
in South Korea was not great. And I remember when I was told I was going to like be adopted by a family, that was pure elation. I remember being incredibly happy because you watch kids come get picked up and leave with people that are going to take care of them.
Hmm.
And living in the orphanage, I was constantly hungry. I was constantly alone. I remember constantly just feeling lonely and sad. And there was always fear too, because the orphanage employees, whether they were told to do this or it was just a part of their training, I think it was just a part of their culture, right? They would inflict like physical punishment on the orphans. And I remember being corporally punished all the time, a lot of beatings, a lot of hitting. And, that PTSD has stayed with me my whole life. Took me a long time to realize that and name that as an adult. But once I realized it, it made so much sense. So you can imagine being a little kid, being told someone was going to take you out of that place and you wouldn't have to experience that anymore. It was pure elation. Um, I remember just having so much hope. I didn't know what it was, right? I just remember knowing that something great was going to happen.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So you shared about how you've made it to here. You also touched on the like as you grew up, your experience being of another ethnicity, um and not really, if it's fair to say, not really having any cultural or traditions that you could hold on to yourself. So having to model after what you've seen and what was heard. And it wasn't it wasn't always kind. Um so thinking now back then, and this is a different question, so forgive me, but I have to ask this. What would you tell that young self um that didn't really like herself too much, didn't know how to be herself? What would you tell that young lady um about, going forward?
Mhm. Well, let's take a step back too, because there's so many layers to this, right?
Mhm.
From the initial abandonment to the mistreatment
Mhm.
to the being alone to the, we all know that some coping mechanisms for people that have our lived experiences are to shut ourselves off
Yeah.
and shut down. You don't let anybody in. You don't
Mhm.
let yourself feel love. Um, you pretend, right? You code switch constantly. You put on these masks of being tough and uh looking like you're okay, but you're like a roller coaster, a mess inside, but you
Mhm.
can never talk about it because it's never safe. Because the minute you start showing those signs of weakness, quote unquote,
Mhm.
right, there's risk. There's a huge risk there. Um, to the point where you're like so afraid of being given up again that you don't want to show any of those weaknesses. All you show are what you think the people in power over you want to see. And so
Mhm.
that's what you learn over and over again. And then for me, the additional layers, right, of being completely torn away from my culture, my people that look like me, my language, my food, all of that
Mhm.
gone. And I was old enough to start school when I came to the US. So they immediately began on, right, erasure of my language. I learned English immediately.
Mhm.
I wish I remembered how to speak Korean. I know I spoke some. I was 5,
Mhm.
but all that was erased. And I assimilated in all the ways I was told to assimilate, in all the ways I was encouraged to assimilate. And then that led to, right, having done all these right things, but yet I still didn't fit into my family, still didn't fit into my society, still didn't fit into the schools that I was a part of. I'm like the only Asian kid in the class picture. And then in the neighborhood, right, where it's clear, like I don't belong there, that I came from somewhere else. And you get the questions of where are you really from? Or do you even speak English? Just those comments and things that are just keep perpetuating your behaviors on erasing your racial cultural identity so that you can fit in
Mhm.
and belong somewhere. But you never do because externally, right? I was never going to be white. It was impossible. I could act as white as I wanted to. I could, pass all the tests on audio. But once you turn that video on, oh, it's like, oh no. And I would get those comments too, like, "Oh gosh," they're like, "You're Grace?" Like, they couldn't believe that I was an Asian person because they had thought I was a white person, you know? So, just all of these things leads to why I didn't like myself very much. I didn't like how I looked, and no matter what I did, I just couldn't escape that, and the older you get, right, the worse it gets. Because the older you get, the more cruel people get. And especially when you're at the ages of, 12 plus, 13 plus, and then high school, that those become really volatile environments for someone like me or like you that have our backgrounds in addition to not being white people.
Yeah.
So my point being, you know, I guess what I would say to that person, the younger me in that situation, is to remember that even though nobody values me as for the real person that I am, that won't last forever. Like in the moment, it feels like nobody does, but it won't last. And like when I finally got to pull away from that community and start building my own life on my terms, make my own decisions, um, I started learning, right, that I have value and
Mhm.
like people cared about me weirdly. Like, it's just like, oh, people actually care about who I am, not about what I represent for my adoptive family or what I represent in the community. Like, as the kid that this family and community saved who had nothing, right? I didn't have to live that narrative anymore.
Mhm.
Like, I could become me. Um, and it would take a long time to really fully actualize that. But that's what I would tell the younger me because at the time, right, I did not see a light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't know that there would be a different way of living, of existing, of being. So I'm hoping that that would have been valuable for me at that age. And that's really what I would tell myself.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I hear you saying a lot of different things, in that. And one of the things that, as I'm sitting here thinking and reflecting as you are sharing that with me is we would like to say these were just things that were in a closed door setting, you know, or in just one set environment. But it seemed, to me from what you're saying and my own experience, that it's more than that. It's a societal thing, like you have to fit a certain narrative. I've definitely had that experience when you said you've had people be like, oh, when you turn on the camera, but they heard your voice, I've had people say, oh, you talk white, you um
Mm.
how do
Yeah.
you talk so so well, and it's those little comments there that like for at a certain point, I'm gonna be completely honest, it chips away at you.
Hmm.
Now I'm glad to say it doesn't really. I get it all the time, and unfortunately it has not stopped. But like, younger me, it chipped away at me because I'm like, dang, okay, I guess, can't be educated out here, but yes, it's almost if society had a certain stigma, a certain, label that it already had attached on you,
Yeah.
and you weren't supposed to be anything other than that. And that's unfortunate. That's really unfortunate. I want to switch gears a little bit here. I'm gonna circle back Um, but you are the CEO and founder of the Inclusion Initiative. My next question talks about, um, what asks you to share a little bit more about your advocacy, your work, and your passion within it. Could you tell us a little bit more about the Inclusion Initiative and your work with that and how that all came to be?
Mhm. Yeah, the Inclusion Initiative really exists to close the opportunity gap for transracial adoptees and foster care alumni. And what I mean by that is there are many of us with the unheard and untold stories of what it was like to really come into our own and build pathways and a life for ourselves outside of our adoption or foster care experiences. And oftentimes, especially for people that have bad experiences with their adoptive families or broken relationships with their families, or like foster youth, like yourself, right, that might never find that permanent home and eventually age out of the system. When we start making our way into the world on our own, we're often starting with zero resources, zero network. We don't have a family, right? So we don't even have support behind us. So what we're doing then is taking opportunities that are afforded to us, but these opportunities are not the same ones, right? That other, like our peers receive who have stable families, loving families, have family networks, um, or are not people of color on top of it. Right. And so, like me personally, what I started doing was I had to work 3 or 4 part-time restaurant jobs and retail jobs to make ends meet. I was trying to go to school at the same time, and we all know, like, that's really hard. It's hard to sustain that, and there I did not graduate in 4 years. It took me 9 years to graduate with my undergrad degree. And so all of these things compound into, a lack of reaching certain career and professional milestones that our peers get to reach much earlier because they have this network and this support system. So they're starting like 5, 10 steps ahead of us. And for us who don't have that and have to kind of scramble and struggle and figure things out by ourselves, and we make a lot of wrong turns, and we have a lot of more barriers and challenges we face. What I have seen and my lived experience is that it's taking us 5, sometimes 10 years longer to reach career and professional goals, wealth goals, right, than our peers that don't have our lived experience. That should not be okay. That is not okay with me. And so I have been able to really accomplish a lot in my professional life. And if it hadn't been for some of the connections I was able to form, some of the privilege that I have, right, from growing up in the area that I did and meeting certain people and, having certain people in my network that I formed, not everyone gets those opportunities. Not everyone gets to have like, really to acquire some of the privileges, right, that I got to acquire. And especially if you're a Black or brown person, these hills are even steeper. Me being Asian American, I got some opportunities that Black people would never have gotten, right? I got some jobs that if I were Black, I don't know that I would have gotten them, right? because racism is so real and biases against certain communities are so real. And so I was able to just like, you know, like muscle my way through a lot of situations and just like dig in and obviously work hard, but we have to work 3, 4, 5 times harder just to get to the same places as our other peers that don't have our lived experiences. So in my 20s, in my 30s, I really struggled with securing resources and meeting people and having mentors and building like this robust network that I heard, right? Everyone tells you, build your network, build your network. Your opportunities come mostly from your network. You get jobs because of your network through, you know, referrals, blah, 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 blah. And have seen it happen in real time, but I didn't have it. And it was really hard for me to build that because I was building it from scratch. Like I didn't have mom and dad's friends that worked at X company to give me internships. Nope, I was mopping floors and, you know, serving people and doing those kinds of things at 22. I wasn't an intern at Deloitte, you know, and so like just those examples of just our lack of access to these wealth building opportunities in our professional lives. It was so acute for me. And the more that I've gained success and my own privilege, um, I just knew that had I had something like this in my 20s and my 30s, you know, I'm in my 30s now, but even like 7 years ago, this would have been huge for me, but I couldn't find it. It didn't exist. And I look today, still doesn't exist. So guess what? Someone's got to build it. And if not me, then who? If not you, then who, right? If we wait for somebody to build these things, it's not going to happen. Because realistically, society at large doesn't care about this. They're not going to care about this. They're not going to care about us. So people that have the ability to do it like me, that really care about what our communities go through and want to make it better, we have to build it. So that's what I'm doing with the Inclusion Initiative.
Thank you for sharing that. Wow. I love it. I love it. You know, I didn't know too much, you know, but I love it even from the name. I was like, oh, we include
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we, and now you broke it down and explained a little bit more. You know, it's much needed. It's much needed. You know,
Yeah. And so
yeah.
I'll explain a little bit how I envision it closing the opportunity gap.
Hmm.
So from the onset, right, it will have this already built network for you
Hmm.
so that you're not having to go build this from scratch, something that, you know, it took me 15 years to do. And the network is filled with exclusively transracial adoptees and foster care alumni because we need people that have our lived experiences to help us and support us along our journeys, especially people like me and others that I know that have achieved success in their careers and can really give back to our communities. Others that need our help need to know how to find us. But how can we find us if we can't really talk about our lived experiences, right? In the
Hmm.
workplace or publicly, how are we even to know how to connect? And there, like I said, there's no network that exists yet like this.
Hmm.
And so here is a built out network for you that you can join with people with your lived experience that is there to help you and support you. So that's one aspect of it. Then there's the mentorship aspect. So, like I said, I had so much trouble finding mentors that could really help me and understand where I'm coming from because they did not share my lived experience. So, things that I was going through, how I navigated the world, how I navigated the workplace was foreign to them. They didn't understand it. So, a mentor relationship just didn't make sense, right? And so it never really panned out. So here is a network, right, full of people with your lived experiences where you can build mentor relationships and have a mentorship program. Not only the traditional mentor program, but also peer mentorships where you can find people in similar areas of life and career trajectory that you are, and you can support and help each other. And then there's also the cultural mentorship. So if you're a person that was placed into a family or a community that didn't reflect you and your culture, but now you want to explore it, right? You want to reclaim it. You want to accept yourself and really learn and understand the culture that you come from. Well, now you can find people that would help you along that journey that have done that work, that have reclaimed their cultural identities, and you can find support in that way. And then, like I said, like visibility is key. We don't see these stories. We don't see each other in media. We're not in Hollywood, much less, we're not in the workplace either, right? Because we don't talk about our experiences. We
Mhm.
can wear what race we are on our face, but we don't wear that we're adoptees or that we were in the foster care system.
Mhm.
That needs to be shared in a safe space that is often not there for us to share in. So visibility is huge. And so this platform will just highlight and tell stories of people with our lived experiences who are now entrepreneurs, or they are, working in companies that they love, or they're engineers, or they're teachers, or, whatever success looks like for them. And telling these stories is huge because we need to see it to feel like a part of the community, like that we matter, right? And there's not enough visibility of our communities out there. So that'll be another aspect of this platform and network. And then finally, there's a career and professional development arm of this platform where there are workshops tailored specifically to you and your lived experience and how to navigate that in the workplace. Skill building, leadership coaching, um, understanding and learning how to build your career with your lived identities, and also job opportunities, career development opportunities, where companies and organizations that care about serving us want to post jobs and want to recruit people with our lived experiences. So all of that, right, is a catalyst toward closing the opportunity gap. So it's putting all those resources in one place and all those people in one place for you to benefit from and to like be in community, and slowly but surely, right, it will close that opportunity gap for us because we're going to be elevating each other, supporting each other, like being able to secure opportunities that maybe we never would have otherwise.
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's
I love it.
it's a lofty vision, and it's just starting, but that's really my hope for this company.
I love it, and, look, you put a little plug in there earlier, but Imma go ahead. So, I know my fellow alumni is listening, I know a couple of you guys have been on here. This is a wonderful space, to come in and to, help our younger counterparts, see that same success, so if you're out there, you feel like you have something to give, or you feel like you need something to be given to you, whether that's mentorship, just support, being a part of a network, this is a space, so I'm a get put that little chime in there for you guys. Um, I, want to circle back, before I get to my last couple questions,
Sure.
you know, um, and well, it's not really circling back. It's talking about your now and your then. Um, how has mental health played a part in this journey? What does that look like? When did it become important to you? When did you know that you needed to, like, okay, I got to get this together? You know, And what did that journey look like for yourself?
Yeah, and I think, I indirectly, like, talked about this, right, when I
Hmm.
talked about my experience growing up and erasure of my identity and culture and just the challenges I had being different, and having to assimilate. Mental health for me was not, like, a known term
Hmm.
until, I was in my late 20s. And I was in the nonprofit space, and started working for a mental health organization. And that was such a gift because I ended up starting I learned a lot, and I learned that this was the thing to be nurtured and to be valued, and to help bring healing. And I think a lot of us that have these lived experiences, right, we muscle through, right? We talked about putting up walls, not letting people in, putting on masks, code switching, pretending to be something we're not. And we don't take care of our mental health because we're not encouraged to. We're encouraged to keep up these facades, and we continue to harm ourselves by doing that. And some people I know, right, come to a breaking point
Hmm.
where they enter into mental illness because they hadn't been taking care of their mental health for so long.
Hmm.
For me, I really I started, I think, dealing with it without knowing I was dealing with it, um, early on in college. I met my wonderful partner, who I've now been with for 16 years, and we have a little baby together, and, he's just one of the best things that's ever happened to me. But when we first started dating, I had all of this trauma and all of these unspoken emotions that I had held in for so long, and I didn't have, a good relationship with my adoptive family, and so that really just it triggered a lot of things in terms of meeting him and being with him because he had the opposite. He had, like, the picture perfect family. He was so loved and cared for. Plus he's a white dude. So he had all the privilege in the world and really got to enjoy a really full life of being a white dude in this world who was smart and educated and had a good family. So, like, he just had, like, this perfect life. And all it did was remind me how bad mine was. It was really hard to float in between those two worlds. And um, we were really great for one another because he became exposed, right, to the inequities and injustice and unfairness in our world through me. Pretty sad that it took me to do that for him. But I know he's grateful for it and he's learned so much and he's really a great ally to all of our communities. But um yeah, he never was exposed to that growing up because he had such a great just family and life. And I, on the other hand, got to absorb that light. I had so much darkness and I pretended, right, that I was okay on the outside, but inside I was struggling so much. But he had nothing but light, nothing but joy. It was so weird. I'd never been around that before, like that much of it. And he gave it unapologetically. He just gave like unconditionally to me. And I couldn't give back to him, but I absorbed it all. But he was okay with it, right? He
Hmm.
like stood by me through all of that. And that's was really like the first step to like my mental health journey was like we had to start talking about it, because if we would argue, right, I would shut down and put up walls because of the PTSD and the fear and the triggers of, if I had behaved that way in the situations I was in growing up, like there was a real risk, right, of being rejected, of being thrown out, of losing the family. Um, so with him, I had to start uh opening up to him, letting some of those walls down, really work on like communication and like work on emotional consciousness. Like, why am I feeling what I'm feeling? What is it that I'm feeling? Like, had to really start talking to him about it. So that was like really a good entry into exploring mental health and taking care of my mental health. And, that evolved into understanding like, wow, Grace, you're like actually kind of in a more safe place than you used to be. Like the things that you used to do to protect yourself, you don't have to do that anymore. It was so, I just remember just being jarred. Like I don't know how else to be.
Mhm.
I had to do a lot of that unlearning of these old habits. And what were some of the outlets, right, that would help me unlearn some of these old habits? So a lot of it was like talking in a safe space to my now husband, starting to talk about this with um like a mental health professional, and then starting to find healthy outlets for like unloading the pressure and stress of the trauma and PTSD that I lived with. And that came in the form of like physical outlets. I realized I was so angry. I was angry all the time. And angry, right? Because I couldn't show I was angry. I had to pretend to be this happy, perfect person when I wasn't. And just angry about all the things that had happened to me. And so I started working out and lifting weights and running, and that became an emotional health uh, practice for me. And I'm now a marathoner, so it's really helped me a lot. And having like that physical outlet in addition to mental health support and someone that you really trust and have a safe space with to just talk and be without judgment. Like those are the things that have really helped me navigate and work through my mental health needs.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for feeling comfortable and vulnerable in this space enough to do so. I know we talked before this, but I ask these questions as I get ready to ask my last two. Uh, I ask these questions, so that you guys out there still, dealing, still in it, whether you at the beginning or in your active healing process, can know that it's okay, to go through that journey, and that journey is unique to you. There isn't no set way. There's guided tips, but there isn't no set way for you to recover from whatever trauma that looks like, whether that's trauma from a system, trauma from a person, place, or thing. There isn't a set, oh, you got to do it this way. Find out what works for you, and do that. I encourage you guys to find a person that you feel safe with, to be an accountability partner, in your healing, and that can look different because it's not always a human. I know people have their pets, their what do they call them? Emotional support animals, and I know that there has been so many people that has had breakthroughs by having that support, so just, as we speak about, mental health, and as Grace shares about her journey, and not just only professionally, but growing into that professional self, that you see her journey. It ain't always start like that, but she has made it to where she's thriving, and it's truly beautiful to see that. And it's awesome, and I admire you because now you have transformed what you have learned and what you have gained, and are trying to offer that for other people, and that's so beautiful to me. My last question for you is, what advice would you like to leave here today? That could be toward any specific group, any person, or in general, however way. Um, yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
What advice would you like to leave here
Advice.
today?
Advice is, I think my advice to this community is to, as best as you can, stop listening to the outside voices and start listening to your inside voice, your voice. It is really hard to do because we are so conditioned from birth that we need to listen, obey authority figures, know what we need. Society is set up structurally, right, to constantly have this outside voice and narrative filter in and feed how we feel about ourselves and how we think about ourselves inside. But if you can practice every day, even if it's just once a day, and tell yourself that you like yourself or you love yourself, even if you don't believe it, the act of doing that is so powerful, because if you're doing it every day, soon you'll realize like it's becoming true because you're starting to listen to you and not listening to the external world. And sometimes the external world has great things to say. So I'm not saying, just ignore that and disregard that. But when the outside world is telling you harmful things about yourself that make you hate yourself or not value yourself, just try to just turn it off and tune it out. And instead listen to yourself, your inner voice that's telling you that you're worthy, that you're valued, that you are human and you deserve everything a human deserves in our world, and that you have a purpose here. I think when I'm talking to other people with our lived experience, I get a lot of the sense or even direct comments of, they don't know why they're still here. Like, what did it matter that they made it through the system, because they don't feel like they have purpose at all.
Mm.
And they feel isolated and alone, right? And so they keep listening to this external world saying like, you don't look like this, so you don't matter. You don't come from this family, so you don't matter. You don't have this kind of money, so you don't matter, right? And for us, where we don't have these external validators saying like you matter, we have to tell ourselves that. And you have to seek out people that will tell you that and be more of that filter for you. And it's one of the hardest things to do. It's one of the hardest things to do is to love yourself. And so That's my advice, is to work on that, because it will help fuel everything else. It will help fuel how you strive to accomplish what you want to accomplish each day, or reach the milestones that you want to reach in your life, and to have the life that you want. You are not defined by your past. You are not defined by being a transracial adoptee or a former foster youth, even though people will put those definitions on you and those biases on you and those stereotypes on you. Like, you define you. Like, you define who you are as a person and who you want to be. And that really just starts with self-love and self-acceptance. And it is the hardest thing, I think, to do in the world. And if I hadn't started that journey of my own self-love and self-acceptance and stopped listening to the white supremacy society and narratives about how I should hate myself because I'm not white, then I wouldn't be here today with you, building the inclusion initiative and living the life that I want to live, right? So that's my advice.
Wow. Such gems, such gems. I call them nuggets. Call them nuggets. I
Yeah.
appreciate you dropping your nuggets. I hope someone out there is listening and takes heed to that advice. Yeah. This last space here is any last comments, and this space is for you to share how people can connect with you. If you got a book, a album, whatever, you got, how people can connect with you, how people can, support what you're doing, and so forth.
Yeah, there's a couple ways to connect with me. So hopefully you'll like share them in your show notes, Michael, but my website is theinclusioninitiative.com, so please visit. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So Grace Young Foster, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can follow my story. So I post a lot about my story, my experience, and of course, what I'm building at the Inclusion Initiative. If you are a transracial adoptee or foster care alumni and you want to be a part of the Inclusion Initiative, I have a survey that I would love for you to fill out so that you can help shape what our platform looks like, what's included, right? We don't want to be told what we need. We want to tell you what we need. And so that's the opportunity for you to help us build a platform that's really going to make a difference for our community. And so all of that you can find on theinclusioninitiative.com. And Instagram handle is the same thing. So there's a lot of ways to follow us and follow me. So I really appreciate anyone that does.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I just want to say I truly appreciate you allow me to be in this space with you. Your openness and your vulnerability and sharing such, it's needed, and I'm hopeful that someone, out there, this story, your journey, your experience resonated with them, and wherever they are in their life. So thank you so much, for taking the time and being on. I really appreciate it. As I get ready to end this, guys, I know that it has been a minute since I have released the episode, and I believe in transparency and what have you. So, a lot of things have changed in my life. I've, like most people know, that I work a whole bunch of jobs, sit on a whole bunch of different boards. But I've always kept like a security blanket, which is like one regular like 9 to 5, and recently left my 9 to 5 in hopes to kind of take on to what God has called me to do. And as I'm pretty sure Grace understands, entrepreneurship, taking that leap, and being on your own, it could be a little bit scary. Um, it comes with its own things and so forth. So a lot of things would be a little bit different. I'm going to be reaching out, for support and trying to keep this podcast going, and trying to get everything else going because until now, I've been funding all that I do by myself, but I know it takes a village. And I know that you guys out there, are here and you guys encourage me each and every day via social media. So thank you guys for that. And that's what my journey looks like now. I'm hoping to continue to do this work, continue to build, just like you, Grace, build, the Resilient Voices and Beyond podcast, build MDD Speaks, up in hopes that I can, help other people out and support them in their dreams and ambitions. With that being said, I do hope to release more episodes. The goal for this season is 50 episodes, and then taking a little time off to start actively working on my book, and sharing that with you guys. That timeline may look a little bit different, because we know life happens. But that is still the plan and the goal. Um, Outside of that, I want to share that we talked about a lot today, a couple different things, and I understand that that could be triggering in many different aspects. So if you have listened to this full episode and you find yourself just thinking and in those thoughts, take some time, take some time to really center yourself, take a few deep breaths, practice some mindfulness exercises. I know some people listen to this on their way to work, listen to this on their way home from work and stuff like that. So I don't know, wherever it's hitting you at, just take some time. But also, if like you like I know trauma is funny this way, that sometimes it takes one significant thing. You could be listening to this and all those thoughts start flooding in that you thought you have passed, or it was you didn't even remember. If you need help finding someone that can help support you, I'm here. Mental health, us, our healing, that's everybody thing. Everybody got something that they need a little bit of help with, and that if that means finding a therapist, finding a support system, I'm here. I'm offering my space. You can email me, you can reach out to me. My number is on some of my platform as well, and I would love to help you find the right person to help you on that journey. um Outside of that, man, we getting ready to go into winter. I know some of you guys have heard the news about this, about like COVID having another strand and stuff like that. So I just ask you guys to be safe, be responsible, take care of yourself. By taking care of you, you help take care of millions of other people. So, if you're sick, wear a mask, get a little bottle of hand sanitizer, you know, but please, no, hand sanitizer does not supplement from you washing your hands. Don't just be sanitizing the whole day and be like, yeah, I sanitize. No, after you use that sanitizer once, or twice, you might want to go wash your hands, So that's just my little tidbit. I'm not here to preach to nobody, but I love you guys. Please stay safe. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond, Season 3, Episode 8. And I hope you guys have a good morning, good night, good whenever you're listening to this. Thank you. Until next time.